Welcome to episode 1 of Practically Green, a podcast that is all about making sustainable changes towards eco living.
Right. And who are we,
How's
Eibhlin?
that? My name is Eibhlin Fitzpatrick. My background is in eco retailing, and I'm a sustainability educator. And I've been working with Anna for the last few years. And I think we make a great partnership.
Which is why we
We
decided to do this podcast.
Exactly. Well, we did a lot of lives on our social medias, and people seem to like it. So the natural progression was to go for a podcast.
And here we are.
Yeah.
So I'm Anna Brown. I'm a microflower farmer, and I'm also a sustainable educator. I've been doing this for, it seems like my whole life, but I suppose the flower farming at a commercial level since about 2018, 2019. And delighted to have been working with Eibhlin and find a kindred spirit. It's great to have a partnership. And I suppose one of the things we've heard and anything that we've talked to people about is just to have somebody else to bounce ideas off. You can feel quite alone in this world. You can feel like you're battling the masses. So having somebody who's like-minded to bounce ideas off and to bring you up when you're down has been really powerful, which is why we're keeping on doing this podcast as Eibhlin transitions from her retail area into a different career. So this is our way to keep working together. So
Yeah.
we
I'm
have
really excited about doing this, Anna.
Yeah, me too. And I'm excited about seeing where you go with your career. So I guess the listeners can tune in to find that out.
Yeah.
We'll have to segment about how we're doing, both of us, in terms of what's coming up. But for this one, I think we're going to keep to a format. We're going to talk about some simple alternatives to begin with. We're going to recommend something that you can do, talk about experiences, not stuff, which is one of the things we always are very keen about. And we're going to, what's the other thing we're going to talk about? Seasonal stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah. So do you want to start off with a simple sustainable alternative there, Eibhlin, that
Yeah,
tell people about? So
absolutely. So I wanted to keep it very, very simple for this one. And as it's spring, I thought we would start with a little bit of spring cleaning. And I am big on not using harsh chemicals in the home or in general would be my main thing. And I think that we should move away from products that say harmful to aquatic life with long lasting effects. Which is what most of our chemical cleaners will actually say. Have you ever noticed that on the back of the
the little
bottles? It's
dead
really,
fish, yes, and the dead
yeah,
trees. Not a happy
yeah,
thing. I would try and
no.
avoid that picture and that situation with all my might.
Yeah, yeah, and especially since I live in the country and like directly outside my door here is a pond, so I'm really really conscious of what I'm using and what's going down through my water system. So my swap is citric acid, and I use that for cleaning. So a lot of the times when you're looking up products for cleaning, vinegar and baking soda seem to be the main two, which are brilliant cleaners. But I've ran a few eco cleaning workshops, and as soon as you say vinegar, a lot of people kind of make a face. So citric acid would be a really great alternative to that. It doesn't smell. It's food grade, and it's an acidic cleaner that's brilliant for things like hard water marks, lime scale, and that kind of thing. So it's a really, really effective way of cleaning your home without the harsh chemicals.
And I mean, vinegar is also an acid, and yes, it
Hmm.
does smell, but the smell does go away.
Yeah.
Um, so why do acids work with cleaning?
Well, they seem to, well, the citric acid in particular seems to lift up the dirt and the grime and cuts through, like it kind of dissolves the soap scum and that kind of thing. So it works to, the acid seems to just dissolve
Yeah,
the
I mean, the
nasties
reason
that
it
you don't
works
want
for
there.
the hard scale is because that's an alkaline. So you're looking
Mm.
at, a strong alkaline. So when acids and alkalines mix, then they become neutral and turn into water. So that's the deep science beside it. But yeah, you're right. The acid does seem to cut through fats and stuff. And I mean, if you're making a meal, a beautiful meal with like something that's like lamb or something, maybe at Easter, you'll have something on your plate that will help cut through that, like a something that's got a little bit of acid in it, like a salad or something.
Mm.
And that's the same thing for your tongue. It appreciates the combination of the acid and the fat. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, the citric acid is the cleaning version of that. But yeah, it's made from citrus fruits. It's just essentially crystallized um juices from citrus fruits like lemons and limes. So it couldn't be more natural.
Yeah.
And it's often used in things like making cordials and things like that. It's used as a preservative as well. So it's a handy one to have in the kitchen press. But I like to just dissolve it in hot water. I'll just mix it up with some boiling water and stir it, and then I use it for cleaning my shower door in particular. And because I said I'm living in the country, it's quite common to have hard water. Um, and my house has ridiculously hard water. And I often got asked about if how do you know if you've got hard water? And you'll know if you always have like a buildup of limescale in your kettle. That's the telltale. And citric acid is a great one to use to descale your kettle, actually. Just putting
That's
a
right.
couple of
Yeah.
tablespoons into it. Yeah, yeah, a couple of tablespoons into a half full kettle, boiling it. And then once it's boiled, carefully giving it a bit of a scrub and rinse out and boil again. And then you're good to go with no nasties.
And your tea
Mm.
won't taste like lemon afterwards.
It won't taste like lemon afterwards. So just a good old cup of tea.
Very good. So that's if I was
Yeah.
a cleaner, I would certainly take that tip on board. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
much of a cleaner. I prefer to be outside. And this
That's
time
your
of
strong
year,
point, isn't it, Anna?
what?
That's your strong point.
Well, yes, to stay outside, definitely.
Yeah.
So for me, the simple swap would be to make willow water. And let me just explain why you want to make it. So at this time of the year, you're possibly um, potting on plants. You might have plants that you've grown in, a small tub, and you're pricking them out and you're putting them into bigger pots. And at that point, the roots might be a little bit like they need a bit of tender loving care. You might also be doing later on in the year, doing softer hardwood cuttings. And actually this time of the year, you'll be doing hardwood cuttings. So before things start to sprout like black currants or red currants, you might be taking off some branches and stick them into a pot with some sand and compost or some grit to create more plants. And the willow water has the magical property of helping the roots to develop, or helping the roots that are. And so to make willow water, you just cut some willow and you put it into a vase with some water. And the water then after a few days is willow water. If you
And
wanted it
that's it.
fast, that's it. If you wanted it faster, you could you could put it in a blender and mix it up, but you want to leave it for a while, because what's happening is that the water, there's hormones leaching out of the willow that are the hormones that help plants to make roots. So willow, if you stick a piece of willow into the ground, it'll root up for you immediately, because it's just full of these hormones that make roots. It's an amazing plant for any number of reasons. But yeah, so basically, if you had some pussy willow in a vase, you'd probably see that there'd be some roots coming out of the bottom, but the water from that vase would be willow water that you could use. So you might want to dilute it a bit. Doesn't matter if you don't, but that's an alternative to things like the hormone rooting powder, or some people have liquid kind of rooting things. So it's just like, for me, I'm a bit cheap, so I like to do things for free. So this is a way to have unlimited supplies of this water that helps the plants root up. But it also, you're not putting anything bad into the ground that's going to affect other things. It'll just help the things that are in the ground root up better when you use it. So you're not going to kill any of the invisible friends, the non-human living beings that reside with us. So that's one. And the science is basically that there's plant hormones that do that. And the willow is really full of these plant hormones, like kind of a teenage boy in testosterone. The willow is full of these plant hormones. So by
Willow's a teenage boy. I love it, Anna.
well, it does feel like that sometimes.
Yeah.
So, those hormones are in very large supply in this plant. So by cutting a few branches and putting them into water, you're getting access to those hormones. So yeah, so it's a really good thing to do. And then you put it in a bottle and put some kind of a label on it. A glass bottle would be my preference, and you can use it later on in the year. But you can make the willow water any time of the year.
Do you dilute it, Anna, afterwards, or do you just leave it as is?
I dilute it a bit. It depends, I
Okay.
suppose, on, if I had the willow in the vase maybe for, 3 or 4 weeks, it's going to be stronger than if I had it in the vase for 1 or 2 days. So,
Okay.
but if you don't dilute it, it's not going to hurt anything.
Yeah. Okay.
But I suppose if
Yeah.
you wanted to go further, you'll dilute it.
Mm.
You mightn't want to make more of it. You mightn't have time or whatever. So, but you can make a large quantity of it around now, and if you had some pussy willow that you brought in as a nice thing to have, the water from that vase will work. That's your willow water made already. Didn't do any work at all. Just didn't throw it out.
Yeah, and is like, so if you don't have pussy willow in your garden, is there anywhere that you could find this, or is it just, sorry, I'm coming really, I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
anything about this, which I
So
think
you
is
suppose,
really good.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be able to recognize willows, but there's apps you can get for your phone that will look at the leaves and tell you. So there's generally, whenever there's water, there's willows growing nearby. So
Okay.
along riverbanks, in ditches. I bet if we walked from where you live, and we walked, a couple of meters, we'd find a willow growing in the ditches near you.
Yeah.
And they're usually recognizable because they've got lots and lots of skinny stems. Because whenever they're cut back, they sprout out. So if somebody was um to cut the hedge, the willow will grow up in these lots of long little parallel things. So I mean, you're gonna like
Yeah.
I'm kind of at this point, I'm so used to recognizing willow that I could, see some on the ditch, pull over my car, pop out and pick some, um, because I just know what it looks like compared to the things you'll see that maybe would be elder and maybe would ash would have similar, but the ash is kind of gray with black buds. That's not a willow, and the elder has a different kind of a bark. So they all kind of grow in the same form, but the willow, and I think really the thing to do is to if you put willow into water, roots will come out of it within like 2 or 3 weeks, and then
That's so cool.
yeah, I mean, if you want to grow a willow hedge, you just go and get willow and stick it into the ground and walk away, and you have a willow hedge. Um,
Yeah.
so
That's
it's
one of the things about being sustainable, is that it's so cheap, isn't it? Like, so often people think that it's like a really expensive way of living, but I think if you're doing it right, you're not spending much money at all.
no, and I mean, I think that's part of what we'll be doing in this podcast is showing people things that they can do that cost only a very little or nothing at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sort of a circular economy, or just, finding the abundance in nature that makes
Hmm.
abundance in your life. That would be how
Yeah.
I would feel about it. So yeah. Yeah. So will we move on to the next section, Evelyn?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering, can you hear my dog is giving out to me here. Can you hear that in the background?
No, but that's
Here's
kind of nice.
yeah, he's coming in. He's a lap dog, and he's not on my lap, so I think he's giving out to me
Well,
first.
do you need to put him on your lap? Does he need to be part of the
I think I
podcast?
will. Dickens is going to join the podcast. No, buddy. He's so
Oh,
attention seeking, Anna.
oh, excellent. He's perfect. He's our
Yeah,
third
he can
co-host.
be our mascot. He's not very well behaved, but he's loved. So
That's really important. Okay,
yeah,
so we move on to the experiences, not stuff. And I know we're both really big into this. It's
yeah,
giving people
definitely.
gifts, or doing things that are experiences rather than accumulating stuff in your house that doesn't actually sustain you, doesn't nourish you, doesn't make you feel better about yourself. It has the opposite effect generally. And so the experience I'd like to talk about is one that's happening in Mullingar at the moment. There's an artist called Rachel Coyne, and she puts on an event every second Friday. She calls it the Artist Mess, and people go. There's a small amount to pay if you can afford it, and she has art materials, just a little bit of teaching, and then you basically are free to chat or to make art yourself. And for me, and there's tea and there's coffee, and if you want to bring a bottle of wine, you're welcome to do so. So it's just a really nice way to meet people, to be creative, to be sociable without necessarily having to be in a pub. It's early enough, I think. She thinks she starts from at 7:30 until 9. So you're home at
So
times.
it's really accessible then.
It
Yeah,
is very accessible. And
that's so lovely.
it's really very nice from a community point of view and meeting people point of view. But you don't have to talk. You can just work, or you don't have to work.
Yeah.
You can just talk. I find myself I've discovered that I'm probably more of a 3D person than a 2D person. So I really struggle with drawing and painting. But it's always good to challenge yourself. And
Yeah.
um I probably will come to a point where I'm more comfortable with it if I keep doing it. So I'm
Yeah.
happy that I'm doing something it doesn't involve having dirt under my fingernails, which is change for me. So
Yes. Yeah,
it's it's
absolutely.
it's it's good that way. But it's a lovely event, and we'll put
Yeah.
a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's in Cúige Studios, isn't it? You
That's
said,
right, in
yeah.
Mullingar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what a great thing to have in our community as well. Like, it's an art studio that's really lovely to go and be in that space with any event that they're doing. It's a really lovely community space. But something like that where you're spending a couple of hours with people you probably don't know yet,
That's right. Yeah, I've met
creating
lots of
something new.
interesting people there. Yeah. And a
Yeah,
very
yeah,
wide range of ages as well. I'm probably on the upper end, but there's plenty of people at, different stages in their life. People who have said, that they have no time for themselves because they have, children and a job. So this is their me time, which is
yeah.
wonderful. So they get a chance to go out and be, who they really are deep down inside, without
That's
all the
Oh, that's
obligations.
so
So
nice. And the
yeah,
fact that you can have a bottle of wine, but you can also just drink a cup of tea.
yeah,
Like I just think that's nice because I think a lot of our social events are based around alcohol. So it's nice to have something that's a little bit different.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's our kind of our experiences, not stuff for this month.
Yeah. Excellent.
And then I was going to move on to the recommendations.
Yeah. Well, this week we talked about a nice recommendation that's good for all ages is our local libraries. Really, really simple. And I feel like I didn't make use of the library at all really until we did some workshops there a couple of years ago. I started running workshops there, and then I realized, wow, this is an incredible resource. For me, before libraries were just a place where you borrowed books. But actually going and spending time in the library and joining the library made me realize that wow, there's a huge amount of resources there that I never would have thought of before. So it's everything from audiobooks to 3D printing, which we were saying I discovered last night, the 3D printer in action. I was very impressed with it. Um, but there's also community events there, workshops that you can attend, and there's classes that you can attend. I think it's so lovely. What's your favorite part about the library, Anna?
Well, the 3D printer is up there because you can find lots of models. So right now I'd like to build something that you can use for the jar when you're draining the water off when you're making sprouts. And I mean, I've made something up with a milk carton, which is grand, but you can actually find people have designed 3D printed models and they're free. So you can take one of those down and
Okay.
print it up and use that. But the second thing I like to do, and this is very frivolous and not at all, well, I suppose it's cynical in the fact, so the library has all the glossy magazines, so the ones that you get in the hairdresser, but they're all up to date.
Yeah.
So, and I suppose as a flower farmer, I'm designing things that need to be on trend. So I
Hmm.
like to go through kind of the Vogues and, the different other fancy magazines, GQ, whatever, just to see what they're putting in terms of the flowers. I mean, they don't often, or just even the colors or what kind of the styles are like. And certainly I love seeing what they say about sustainability when they're not at all sustainable, but they're paying some lip service to sustainability, I suppose. And it's good to see what they're talking about. So I like to go to the library for like an hour and grab a couple of those glossy magazines and have an old read, just flick through, look at the pictures, um, and then put them back
Yeah.
on the shelf. And having not spent any money on them, that's
Yeah.
one of my things. But yeah, I mean, as a child, I grew up in a house without television, and I loved to
Hmm.
read, and I was a very fast reader. So I worked my way through Mullingar Library as a child, and kind of eventually got
Yeah.
courage to move into the adult section, I suppose as a teenager. And, I was kind of worried that they'd chase me out of it, but I'd read all the kids' books, so I needed to move on. And just the worlds that were open to me, the worlds of theater, the worlds of books, the things. And I think the librarians were a little bit helpful to me in not, having me not get books that maybe weren't suitable.
Mm.
That they would have known maybe the ones that maybe I shouldn't be reading, and sort of
Yeah.
guided me. But I think I spent a lot of time in the A's and B's because I was afraid to venture any further into the library. So I read a lot of authors whose, surnames were the A's and the B's.
Yeah.
Like Agatha Christie would have been a big one. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I have a great fondness for the library, and I love that we taught workshops there. And
Mm.
workshops there are different because people can just wander in, and the way that they wouldn't do if we're teaching things in a kind of a more private location, and that can always be
Yeah.
funny and entertaining as to who's going to show up. And
I love that aspect of it because it's so accessible. Like you don't know who's going to turn up, and it's all age groups. When you're teaching a workshop, there it really is
it is, yeah.
all age groups, and that's really good because then the questions come from really different ways of thinking. So I found it so beneficial even teaching the workshops. Never mind attending them, but attending them is really good as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a huge variety that they put on, depending on what funding they have, I suppose. But they do a lot to help educate the community, I suppose. And I mean, if you go into Mullingar Library on a Friday morning, there's babies everywhere. And
Yeah.
you know, if you don't like babies, avoid it. But if you like babies, it's just delightful to see all these
Yeah.
babies and mums feeding and just, you know, it's just to me, that's a really nice thing to see. I wouldn't have friends right now that have young children. So
Yeah.
seeing all those babies in one place is I think it's quite delightful. I mean, I'm happy to leave at the end of it.
Yeah.
It is very nice to see. You know, I suppose babies in public and there's nobody feels like they have to keep their babies quiet. And, you know, libraries are
Yes.
a quiet place, but for Friday morning, the library is not a quiet place. And that's
Mm.
fine. You know, that's absolutely spot on. I suppose things like the free Wi-Fi, the computers, the printing, like that's all very useful for people who don't have access to those things at home.
And also there's meeting spaces there as well. So
That's
I'm on
right.
the Mullingar Climate Action Network, and we meet there every second week, and it's just such a like it's a private meeting room that we have there for free. And I just think that's invaluable for a group like us. You know, where else are we kind of supposed to meet? So it's really, really beneficial. So not everybody, I wouldn't have thought of that straight off the bat to meet in the library, and I think
Yeah.
it's a good
It,
place
it's
to
it's
go.
providing a third space that isn't expensive and isn't forcing you
Hmm.
to buy things or to have
Yeah,
alcohol involved or whatever. So those, I think we'll
yeah,
talk more about those third spaces as we move on because I think we're both interested in community and those third spaces are really important. Things that aren't your home and aren't your
yeah,
work, you know, where
yeah,
you meet people in a way that's different to those places.
yeah,
So we highly recommend that you check out your local library, see what they
absolutely.
have to offer, go in, talk to the librarians. They're really nice. And I suppose with the way that they've changed it now that you can check things in and out yourself, the librarians are there to help the public. They're not there to check books in and out because the computers can do that.
Yeah.
They're there to actually help you if you've got a question. I mean, I remember during COVID, the librarians basically chose books for me and left them for me to pick up. I just said, you know, whatever you think, because
Yeah,
we couldn't go in and browse, and they picked amazing books, and I was really pleased. And they have actually libraries have book clubs as well, so even just
they do.
as a way to recommend books. And I have to say, because I'm working outside a lot, I love an audiobook so I can, you know, be listening to
Yeah.
something as I'm digging, as I'm working in the fields. And you know, you can do that free with the libraries. You don't have to subscribe to some service. You can actually just get it for free. So yeah, libraries rock.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're really we're really selling it on it, aren't we?
Well, and so we should. I mean, this, you know, it's
Yeah.
just really good service. And if you haven't checked out your local, and I suppose, you know, like if you love books, but you want to buy books, then you have a house that's full of books that you're never going to read again. And
Yes.
you know, you've got to then buy storage for them. You have to make the house bigger. So having a library where the books are always there if you want them, but you
Hmm.
don't actually have to store them. That's a really good
Yeah.
thing. I think. So
Yeah, it's an easier way to move into kind of minimal waste living, isn't it?
indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, as our houses get smaller, then I guess having the library there to have the books in is quite a good thing too. So the next thing we have is the seasonal stuff. Um, so I think that's on me as well, and I want to talk about nettles.
Yeah.
Um, so nettles are, you know, people look in their garden and they say, "Oh, there's nettles over there. I must dig them out. This is terrible."
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you have any nettles growing near you, Evelyn. Do you have any
Yeah,
nettles?
loads of them, which I used to see as a complete and total nuisance, and totally opened my eyes in the last few years of the benefits of nettles. So I'd say you probably know more about them than I would, Anna, but I've gone from definitely being a person that thinks they're a pest to really embracing nettles. I think they're brilliant.
Yeah. So the first thing I suppose would be as a home for butterflies or for
Mm.
the caterpillar stage. So butterflies, a lot of butterflies, a lot of native butterflies will lay eggs on nettles, and they lay the eggs there so that when the eggs hatch, that the caterpillars that come out of those eggs have something to eat. And nettles are a really good food source. So, and not just for caterpillars. I mean, I like to dry nettles and make a nettle tea, and I've said it to you, I suppose, many times. Whenever I feel like I'm getting a bit sick, I get
Yeah.
my nettle tea out, my dried nettles. I make nettle tea, and I tap on my the points that are good for waking up your immune system. And
Hmm.
you know, I don't seem to get very sick. Like it seems to
Yeah.
the nettles seem to head it off at the pass. Now I'll probably get sick
Yeah.
soon because I said that, but
Yeah, to be Murphy's Law. But
but
it's so, I've had a lot of people, because I sold nettle tea in the shop when I had it, and a lot of people drank it for their gut health as well, Anna, and for their
that's
digestive
right. Yeah,
system.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So nettles are really high in lots of nutrients that you need, and they also don't have any side effects. So some of the herbs might be very powerful, but they might have, some side effects. Nettles are very gentle, and so there's no negative side effects. So you're basically, if you're not getting the nutrients you need for whatever reason, putting some nettle tea in there sustains you. So, you might not have calories, but you have everything else that you need in the nettle tea from, kind of a micronutrient point of view. And the same for plants. So I would pick some of the nettles that grow where I work and put them into a big vat of water. It's actually a dustbin I have for mine with a tap at the bottom. And I let that sit for a couple of weeks, and it smells really, really bad. But it
I
makes
thought
a
you were going to
really,
say lovely.
no, it smells terrible. But that's the sign that it's in good shape. I mean, you can
Okay.
avoid the bad smelling if you don't add any water. But I mean, so it's a bad smell, then you go and smell something
Yeah.
dirty and it's all right. But and diluting that and putting that as a plant feed for plants. So the most, so there's plants need, like, there's three main things: nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. But they need nitrogen for leaf growth, for the green leafy growth. And the nettles are very high in nitrogen. So if you have tomatoes that you want to, like, give a really good kickstart to, or anything really at this time of the year, the best thing you can do is make a nettle tea and then use that, to water that, like you dilute it and you water it, or you can spray it on the leaves,
Mm.
but not on a sunny day because that'll hurt the leaves. But yeah, so the nettles, and I mean, for me, like, I like to do things the easiest way possible. So I'll just make that little tea, and then as I'm watering from my water butt, I'll add some of the nettle tea to that water, and everything gets a dose of nettle. And you're not going to overwater. You can't put too much on. It's not going
Hmm.
to harm any of the invisible creatures
Oh,
living in
that's so
the
good.
soil. It's one of the best fertilizers you can use, and it's free. You
Yeah.
know,
Again,
so,
free.
like, why would you go out and buy things when you can have it for free? And
Yeah.
you've probably kept the nettles in your garden a little bit under control. You don't want them to take over the whole garden, even though they're
No,
great.
of course.
But
Yeah.
so by cutting them back a bit, more will grow. Um,
Hmm.
and you make this really good stinky fertilizer for them.
Yeah.
But finally, can I talk about making some nettle soup?
I was just going to ask, have you ever cooked with nettles?
I have. So
Yeah.
I've used them actually in soap making. So I've used them to color a soap. But so
Oh,
that's
okay, that's
that's
a good
kind of
idea.
it dried, but they make a kind of a nice green soap. But yeah, so if you want to make a tasty nettle soup, you pick some nettles, you wear gloves, you have long
Yeah.
sleeves, be careful.
Hmm.
Bring them in, put them in a colander, give them a rinse, and even use hot water if you want. But after they've been wilted for a while, they stop stinging. So,
Yeah.
and your soup is basically some nettles. You start off with maybe frying an onion in some oil or butter, and then you'd peel some potatoes, or not peel them, cut them up small, add the nettle tops and some stock or some water and salt, or a stock cube and some water, and just cook that for a while, give it an old push with the blender and taste it. That's the most important thing with cooking, is to taste as you go.
Yeah.
Um, so you'll know if you need to add something to it. But that's the nettle soup. It's basically nettles, potatoes, and onions. You can add leeks if you want. You can add more things if you want, but that's
Mm.
basic soup. That's, and supposedly the old people would say it's really good to have nettles this time of the year. It clears your liver, whatever.
Hmm.
It's toxins, whatever that means. But I mean, as a tasty soup and as something like, it's like we need greens this time of the year. We really need greens, and there's not that many
Yeah.
that's really available. So nettles and things like wild garlic, they're free greens that are out there for us to add to our food. And you can put them into a stew, you can put them into, you can dry them, put them into all things during the year. But like for me, the nettle soup, the potato soup is the way to go. And that's
Yeah.
also, it's free. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I laugh at the nettle soup because that was one thing that my one of my granduncles used to always threaten, that if I came to his house he'd make me nettle soup, and I always thought the thoughts of it was awful, but actually I'm going to make some of it this year. You've inspired me, Anna. Thank you.
good. Yeah, let
Um
us know how you get on
I,
with that.
yeah, I was at a course a couple of years ago. It was actually a woodworking course, and we did a potluck kind of thing, and this woman brought a nettle cake, which I thought, oh wow, okay, that's unusual to bring that. It was absolutely delicious. It was so moist,
And was it
and I
like a
had
Madeira with nettles in it, or was it something more kind of green and
it was more of a sponge with nettles in it.
right? Okay.
And there was like a tinge of green throughout it. It was really, really unusual, and I was kind of nervous tasting it. It was gorgeous. I think it was the nicest thing that was brought to the potluck.
Right.
It was really delicious. So yeah, I need to start adding them to my own cooking actually.
But there is a strong flavor and sort of a scent. If you walk on nettles, you'll get that smell.
Mhm.
And um, there's a woman called, what's her name, Rose, that she does Mary Ellen's Meadows cordials, and she
Oh
makes a
yes.
nettle cordial, which is probably
Oh,
has
which is
health benefits and delicious, but it has that
yeah.
nettle smell. But it's quite
Mhm.
sweet as well. It's quite a nice thing to have with the gin, rather
It's
than a tonic.
lovely. And
Yeah,
I think there's
yeah,
citric acid in that as well.
that's right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
she's out foraging, and there would be, I'd say, I don't think she makes any claims, but I'd imagine that there would be health benefits to drinking that.
Yeah.
As long as you didn't put too much gin into it, you'd get the health benefit.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Um yeah, that's really good. So there's loads of benefits to it. And I've also heard about it being a natural antihistamine as well if you've got allergies to have your local nettles and mix it with your honey in your tea. So that's
Right.
another. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And I've heard that one about the elderflowers to if you have a lot of
Mm,
hay fever to get local elderflowers and make something with them and use that. And of course the local honey as well is supposed to
yeah,
be, yeah, but yeah, probably, I mean, the homeopathy says to treat like with like. So the one about the soap, it says, because nettles sting you. If you've got something that's stinging, you treat it with
yeah,
nettles. So, but yeah, it does
yeah.
actually make a very nice soap. It does give it kind of a nice, subtle kind of a green color. I must actually make a nettle soap again now soon. I'm going to be teaching. So I'm going to be
I'd
teaching some
love to know if
workshop.
anybody does. Sorry,
No, no, go ahead.
sorry, and I cut you off there. Go ahead.
I was going to talk about
I'd
some
love to
workshops
know
about,
if people do
yeah,
make these things. Like, I'd love for them to kind of reach out and let us know if they are kind of making
nettle
things
soup.
with the nettles now. Yeah, they're inspired by it.
Yeah, yeah. I've met people who've said to me that they're making the fertilizer with it, or that they already knew about
Yeah.
it, and they do it. Yeah. I mean, it's just such a good thing to have in your garden, a big tub of,
Mm.
stinky water that makes your plants very happy. So,
And you were saying you incorporate them in your workshops.
well, no, I'm going to be teaching if so. I've got some creative Westmeath funding, and
Okay.
I won't be teaching in the refill mill anymore because the refill mill is no more. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm going to be starting teaching workshops in Cúige and in Water Street Association out in Castlepollard, and I think I'll be doing a soap making course in Water Street probably in May or maybe later. I don't know. I'm planning that. So if people are interested, just keep an eye on my Instagram or my newsletter or my website to see when those might be. And I guess we'll probably have a podcast before that so we can talk about the workshops then at that point. But
Yeah. Yeah, we
yeah,
will.
it's time for the soap making course. I feel like there's
Oh,
definitely
I loved your soap. I've done your soap making course a couple of times and you make it so simple, Anna. It's just really, because like I always say that my sustainability journey only started a few years ago and I'm always learning about what we have around us and basic techniques to do these things, and you're really great with your courses to enlighten us with those kind of things, that you make it simple basically is what I'm saying. You make it simple for people that haven't any base to start with. So definitely would recommend it to people if they
Thank
were
you.
tempted to make their own soaps.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that more in another episode. Um,
Absolutely.
so I think we'll wrap up at this point. Um,
End of episode 1.
yes, we've been going for nearly an hour, Evelyn.
Have we actually, Anna? Wow.
That's what the recording says. Yeah, yeah.
Lot to talk about, so
Obviously. So I suppose, subscribe to our channel, um,
yeah.
subscribe to our newsletters, and
And
yeah,
comment and let us know what you'd like to hear us talk about as well.
leave us a
We'd love to
review.
get some
Yeah.
we'd love some feedback. And yeah, reviews would be really helpful as well because we would love to get a community going around this podcast. So that'd be brilliant.
So that's it until the next time.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. Thanks, Anna.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.